Hey, I think we're live for our Hangout. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Some of us are here, not all of us are here, but we of the Dungeon Scrawlers are here to hang out with you. How you all doing? Just doing some before game prep stuff.
Yeah. So we were just talking about so this is the pre-game hangout for the 220. It's not the game. Game starts at 6:30. So we were talking a little bit about Lovecraft, the background of Dreamlands, where Dreamlands comes from. As soon as I mentioned Dreamlands, Christy knew it right out. She was like, "Oh, that's from the book, blah 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 blah." She has a story like what was it called? Aquarium about this. Like, she wrote in one of those anthologies. She has a story.
Christy knows what's up.
Yeah, she knows what's up. She's so much better read than I am. Like, I basically grew up reading nothing but fantasy. I mean, nothing but fantasy. You want me to, be a tour guide to Middle Earth, I'm there. But you want me to, discuss, I don't know, War and Peace, I'm a little bit lost. So,
I have not read Lovecraft, and I don't honestly feel guilty about that.
Yeah,
I feel like to live in this culture and to write, I should know like the content of them, but I do not feel the need to actually read it myself.
Yeah, you can't have read everything, and you can't have read everything that everyone else has ever read. Like when people are, movies less so. I mean, if you haven't seen Star Wars, or if you haven't seen, it's kind of like, that's a little bit surprising. But if someone has not read, a particular book that I've read, I'm not at all surprised. There's so many books out there.
There are a lot of movies I've never seen, but are enough of the cultural zeitgeist that I can fake it.
Yeah.
Usually mine. There's some TV series too that usually I can fake it, so people don't know that I haven't actually seen it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hi,
so
I'm back.
I went to college with this woman, and this was like 15 years ago. Okay, it's not like forever back in the day. I don't know how old I look to all of you, but I went to college with this lady who had never seen Star Wars, never had any concept of Star Wars. Somehow completely missed all of the cultural references and zeitgeist, nothing. And, my geeky friends and I were like, okay, well, something must be done about this. So we started watching Star Wars, and we started with episode 4 because I don't think episode 3 was even out yet. So like we couldn't start with the prequels. We started with the original movies, which is probably what you should do anyway. So we're watching the movie and she's like, oh, wow, this is great. And she's getting really into this Luke and Leia romance. And we're like, oh, it's okay. It's okay.
Walk it back.
Yes. And like by the end of A New Hope, she's like, that Han Solo, he's such a jerk. I don't know why anyone would like him. And then Empire Strikes Back starts and she's like, oh, I get it now. And we're like, yeah. And then there's the climactic fight with Luke and Darth Vader, and our friend is getting really into it. She's like, oh, Darth Vader's so terrible. And then they have that conversation where Darth Vader's like, no, I am your father. And she's like, oh. like totally shocked and surprised, like what even happened right now? And I'm like,
spoilers, Eric.
This is what it must have been like watching the original on opening night with a crowd full of people who just had no concept.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
It's amazing. We showed it to my son, but I have to admit I don't remember his reaction to that scene. I do remember we watched Star Wars when he was quite little, and then we kind of held off on Empire Strikes Back, so it felt like it would be a little intense. We also sent him to the bathroom when they come and they find Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru turned down corpses. We're like, you should take a bathroom break. My favorite part was him watching and being like, that Darth Vader, he's a good boss. I don't mean he's a good guy. I mean he's good at bossing. Now I see Darth Vader and think he's good at bossing.
Nice.
Yeah, he gets the job done.
We had a friend who had never who did not experience the cultural zeitgeist of Soylent Green, he'd never heard of it. So I was like, well,
Oh, wow.
this is no Empire Strikes Back moment, but pretty good. So we're like, yeah, we're gonna watch Soylent Green. Okay. And we're watching it, and then we're a little over halfway through, and he gets a phone call, and he's talking to our mutual friend, and he's like,
no.
"Oh, we're watching Soylent Green," and then you hear him go, "What do you mean it's people?" We're like, "God damn it, I wanted this moment."
Yeah.
Well, it was good that your friend hadn't had the zeitgeist, because the trouble, I watched Alien
Mhm.
not that long ago, and I'd never seen it, but I knew practically beat for beat what happened in it, because culture.
Right.
And it was pretty disappointing, from that point of view. And my friend, who it was total nostalgia for, who was the one showing it to me, they were like, no, it's great, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, but it's not a surprise, and other people have imitated it, so some of the imitations built on it. So I'm looking back at something that's only the base level, even though it was new at the time. And
I missed the
so
window.
Yeah.
maybe it would have been better if I just didn't watch it.
This won't surprise you, but I don't watch trailers and I don't read book jackets because that is freaking spoilers. And
Very on brand for you.
the two best movie experiences I've ever had. Well, I shouldn't say ever had, but my right now in my mind, what's sticking out to me and movies I keep going back to were movies that had really surprised me because I didn't, for instance, Life is Beautiful by Roberto Benigni.
Mhm.
I had no idea I was going to a theater to watch a movie that was set during the Holocaust. No idea. So I had no, and then the final scene where his dad goes, the last time we see his dad, not prepared, not even close. And then the
I
other
mostly
one-
blocked that movie out. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you for reminding me,
man.
Stephen. Now I'm emotionally crippled. Okay, end of show. See you all
Wait,
later.
wait, wait, wait.
We
This
can't
will
believe
make you
the
happy.
cats now.
This will make you
It's
happy.
fine. It's fine. I'm
The
good.
movie made by, and you guys will know his name, the guy who made Shaun of the Dead.
Mhm.
Okay, World's End.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, no idea what that movie was about. I just knew it was by the guy
Simon
who
Pegg.
made Shaun of the Dead.
Now I'm
Yeah,
done showing
fine.
you.
Wonderful
Yeah.
twist. Wonderful
Mhm,
twist.
mhm.
Did not see that coming. But if you watch the freaking trailer, it's not a surprise because they give it away. Oh my God, why would you do that?
Yeah, I can see that for movie trailers. Definitely, I do not watch trailers either because they just give away. It's especially nowadays. Yeah, they just basically summarize the movie.
Yeah.
But or there's they'll in the trailer. There's that point where a character has died, but you're like, but I saw the trailer and they did this thing, so I know they're not really dead.
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But book jacket covers I think are we were talking a little bit about this before. They're sort of they're sales pitches, but they don't necessarily truly reflect what's in the book
Right. If
100%
they're done well,
accurately.
but there's plenty that don't do it well.
Yeah,
I
And
think
that's
the
true.
art is
That's true.
the trick is
Yeah.
you find something that's
I just
special
can't
and you
risk
put that in there. And
Yeah.
and it should not be, if the thing that's special about your book doesn't show up until the midpoint, then the book has a problem.
Yeah.
It has
Oh
to
wait,
be earlier.
let me take a note here. What?
I had an
feel like-
author once. Sorry, I had an author when I worked at WotC, wrote an Eberron novel, Taint of the Black Brigade, which revolved around a Tontine. So a bunch of soldiers from the last war had this agreement, whoever's left alive gets the thing. And that revelation is a big part of what is the catalyst and the inciting incident. And he
Yeah,
was like, but it's a twist. It's a twist. And I'm like, Paul, if that's not there, all we have is dicking around in the city and a shadowy figure. I can't put that on a cover.
yeah.
That won't get people into it. But I think if you read that for a certain kind of reader, I'm like, if you want to go in and you're like, I trust you, you're going to do something cool, knowing the cool thing is coming, the first cool thing is coming,
Yeah.
can kind of pull you through a
Yeah.
lot of that scene setting and a lot of that character establishment that you might otherwise be like, I don't know if I trust you to get to something.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I do. I tend to default if nothing goes on my book jacket that couldn't be deduced from the first 5 pages. So in other words, the inciting incident is right freaking there. your first couple pages.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I'm spoiling much. Otherwise, I just can't, and you're right. If I know the author and I trust them, then I'm not even gonna, because some friggin' marketer has, took a dump on the back page of the book, and I don't want to read that. So
I feel like I need to like put in a word, because I was raised
Wow.
by somebody. My
Bold.
mother reads the last page of every book,
Oh,
pretty well every book that she picks
oh
up.
no.
And people will talk about it like it's sacrilege, but I actually heard somebody talking about it, and they linked it in an interesting way, that it can be about anxiety, because like the twist and the reveal often relies upon the reader sort of being in this state of extreme tension and sometimes like worry or grief or sadness for these characters, or the grief or sadness like sucker punches you with some of the sudden deaths. And I think that it is worth like acknowledging that people get to decide if they want to undergo that or
Yeah.
not, because there's been like big TV show reveals that I was glad I was spoilered for, because I could kind of brace myself. So I don't think it's a sort of fundamental like only an unspoilered experience is the best one for everybody.
right, but those people can choose to go to the last page of the book.
Right.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be on the back cover, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean, yeah, I agree with that. That's there's I know people who do that too, but I feel really let down when, if somebody gives something important, something that I was going to enjoy, the first act, basically. I want to enjoy the first act. If they put it on the back cover, I just like, I don't know.
Hey, dude, Hamlet, everyone dies.
Yeah.
Hey, not everyone dies.
Not everyone
Like, one
dies.
person lives.
That's right.
The ship sinks.
I find often the things that get spoiled for me, like I still enjoy consuming them, like watching the movie or reading the book, because I also, it's sort of like being able to, I like reading books a second time because I like being able to watch how the beats unfold in a way that will lead to that big reveal, right?
Yeah.
And I think for me there's joy in that too, right? Like there are books where like the twist is the big deal, and then I absolutely got spoiled because I don't know when to stop reading tweets. And I still like, actually we just watched The Force Awakens with my kiddo, and that was one, right? That has a big like surprise thing. He has a lot of anxiety, so we opted to warn him. But I got spoiled because there were trolls going around spoiling everybody. And I still enjoyed watching it to see them hit the notes that would make that really punch you, besides just like, you care about this thing and now, and to build that up. Like, it was still something pleasant. So you still get that second watch experience, but you do lose that first watch experience, which is still.
Well, I mean, obviously, her hair was the exact same color as Chewbacca's. You knew he was going to turn out to be your father. I don't know why people were so shocked.
I'm being super
Randy,
careful, just
spoiler.
in case.
Oh, sorry. If you haven't
Just
seen
in
it.
case.
I think for me too, there's an element of trust that, for instance, I've lost with Joss Whedon and stuff he directs, because some of his twists have felt like power plays, where I felt very kind of jerked around,
Manipulated.
Yeah, manipulated as a reader, because his comic series did the same thing, as well as a watcher. So
yeah, it's like he's forcing you into a relationship that you did not agree to.
Yeah,
like you didn't read the contract, you didn't
emotions.
sign the contract.
I'm really curious. What can you give me an example? Like I'm not sure. The only late thing that he's done that I know he's done that I've watched was the first Avengers movie. Is there something since then that you're referring to, or?
Well, I feel like because he has a thing with killing off characters, and I feel like I shouldn't like detail all of them because that's major spoilers for like everything he's touched. But he did it once, and that felt earned. And then he did it again, and then he did it again, and then he did it again. And I'm like, you haven't earned these, and you're just sort of like jerking me around. With sort of he had a particular like beat structure where I felt like he would build up your investment in a character or that character's relationships, and then he would kill that character,
Yeah.
and then particularly in the comic series he had a particular way of sort of smashing your nose as a reader into the grief of the characters who remained.
Oh.
So you couldn't even quite just sort of like take in that the character was gone yourself. You had to be there just deep in the grief of the characters who remained.
Mhm.
And
What's comic
like,
book? Wait, what comic books did I'm not familiar with them.
he did an X-Men run.
Oh,
Yeah.
And that
Which is
was not there for.
I mean, I really liked that series, but you're right. That is very emotionally manipulative, that series.
I think too, there's a difference between the sort of like building and earning that experience, right? And pulling what I call the haha, I made you care.
Yep.
yeah.
Because that's that power play feeling. And there's that like when you have someone do something that's painful because it's painful, and it doesn't exist sort of fully in the thematic sort of weave of this thing, it just feels icky, right? It's that's the kind of thing that it would be good to be spoiled for me, because I'm like, that just makes me angry.
So
like
that's a really interesting concept. I hadn't thought much about consciously the idea of earning the death. The author has to earn the death. I mean, like in Game of Thrones, I don't know how would you comment about that? Did you read that?
yeah.
So
So like
I read the first one.
I read the first one.
Some of them are very earned.
I'll admit,
Some of them are
and-
just random, and you're like, what? Which
Well,
is,
and-
I mean, that's part of the
Help me
tone, right?
understand.
I was just gonna say, like, I feel like when the show diverged as well, like they wanted to be Whedon, but they were so awful at like taking the viewers on the emotional journey that it didn't work. So they're like, haha, we made you care. And the audience was like, no, you really didn't.
Not in this case. Like if
Yeah.
you'd given us a couple more seasons, we might have cared about this character, but you didn't, did you?
What were
you
you
wanted
wanting to say,
to-
Stephen?
Yeah.
about that?
Help me understand what you mean by the author.
So, like, give an example of Game of Thrones, the first book, right? And Ned Stark's death is very shocking, but in retrospect, you see it coming. He
Minor
earned- that
spoilers for
happened
Game of Thrones.
because-
Yeah.
I was going to give this one because we're having
Yeah.
a writing chat.
Yeah.
That happens because of all the actions he takes. It
Right.
happens because of all the things he believes and ignores. So when it happens, it's shocking, but looking back, you go, nothing else could have happened here,
I see.
right?
Like it
this
made
is the
sense.
the
I see.
natural outflow of every active agency available to him leads to this
Right.
point, right?
Right.
And it's tragic and it's shocking and it's satisfying in a really dark way because it was earned, because the whole book is built towards this
Yeah.
and you can't see it until it happens.
Yeah.
Or maybe you
Which
can.
is remarkable. Like that's
Right.
great. Like when an author can pull something like that off, it's amazing.
So help me. Give me an example of one that was not earned in the
Oh.
Game of Thrones. Can you think of it?
Okay, so I didn't watch the show, and honestly, I've only read the first book.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Because I
Game
mean,
of
one of the things that I remember, one of the first things I think of when I think of Game of Thrones is, damn, that dude does not have trouble killing off characters that he spent a lot of time making.
Yeah.
And for me, like having
Mhm.
read the first book and then watched the show, and even before the show diverged, that was sort of more of a quantity problem for me. I felt like George R. R. Martin like built up this and earned, and sort of you could see where it came from, character reactions or whatever, and he spent it on Ned, and then he didn't have enough build up time for the next death or the next death or the next death or the next death, like. And so for me, any one of those, if that had been the only one in a book or like half a book, it would have been like okay. But like one after another, I'm like, you with so many in a row, you can't earn any of them. It's just you can't anymore.
Yeah, at that
for
point,
me.
I feel like it becomes a thematic element of the setting, right?
Yeah.
No one is safe. Anybody can
Yeah.
die.
Yeah,
And-
very
and
much.
that's-
Very
That's
much.
kind of the thing. And so this is one of those where I can't speak as eloquently on it because I picked other things to read. And But I think that there's some space in there where it becomes a sort of a different thing, because it isn't about the character and the character choices so much as making you as the reader sort of understand this is an unsafe place.
Yeah.
And
that's-
whether that's, you know, successful or not kind of depends on like how much you want to read a story where it's an unsafe place. That's exciting for some people, and that's anxiety inducing for some people.
Yeah, I mean, there's parts of it I didn't want to. I still haven't watched, and I don't think I'll watch. But
Speaking as somebody who has watched all of it for my sins, like, no, there's no reason to ever watch all of it.
yeah, I've heard about the Theon stuff, and I couldn't go there.
Well, and so part of the reason I enjoyed The Witcher as much as I did is like it came out and I watched it and I'm like, oh, this was kind of like basic fantasy, like going a little bit for the gritty, not quite as much as Game of Thrones.
Mhm.
And like it suddenly, like this weight lifted off my chest, which was the pervasive sexual violence that is Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I can like
life.
breathe again. So having like had that experience where it's like, okay, here's a fantasy and it's not like completely gone, but it is so much lighter. I'm like, I'm not going to go back to pervasive sexual violence again. I'm just not. It's terrible. Why are we forcing ourselves to watch this? So
Yeah.
Keep adapting books written by a certain subset of authors is what it is. Yeah. Zapkowski does not
Also, it had
fall into
Henry
that
Cavill,
trap.
so I
So also it had
is-
Henry Cavill.
I did
so.
start reading that and go, my God, there is not a woman with any purpose other than to be sexy or a monster in this. But structurally, it's very interesting.
Which one?
The first Witcher book.
Oh, yeah.
Mm,
Well,
It's a
what's
lot
it?
of-
Siri is freaking amazing.
mm,
I don't feel her.
this is
I
a
don't
much
think it's
this is
his
a much
strength.
larger conversation.
I don't think it's his strength. Let's say that.
Okay.
What?
Yeah.
What is in his strength?
I do
At least
think
those early
that
books.
his women tend to have
I hear the TV show is much better.
more agency and more possession of their own selves in the world than you find in most major fantasy series. And he obviously respects and looks up to women a lot. I just don't think he's necessarily the best at writing them.
I think in the first book, I don't know that I agree. You have the one character, the priestess.
Which book do you consider to be the first
You know,
book?
I don't know. I went on my library app and it said number 1, and now
Okay.
I can't remember which one it is.
Was it a
If I
bunch of
find my
short
phone.
stories?
The Last Wish.
It's sort of an interweaving kind of thing. It's sort of like a bunch of short stories that interweave. Is that a
Okay,
different
well,
thing? It's not listed as an anthology.
there are two
I'm gonna
sort
look.
of anthologies, The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny,
I don't think it's
which
either
are
of those.
widely-
Maybe it was Last Witch.
which are widely considered to be the first books in the Witcher story. But it then becomes like an ongoing story, starting with Blood of Elves, which is the first
Last
actual novel.
Wish.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that's better. This one, you basically have lady monsters who are punishments for people having sex. And you have sexy ladies who have sex. And you have a grouchy priestess who seems like a badass, but is the opposite of sex. And then a magic, he goes to talk to a wizard, and the wizard has a naked lady that walks around and will fuck everybody. So that part, that's what I said. Maybe this book's not for me.
Look, I'm
Maybe I
not
should
saying
try the next one.
I'm not saying that you're wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
But I would say
are-
that those are not ladies. Those ladies exist within the framework of what's a dude want?
Yeah.
And that's I'm tired of that.
I obviously, like I said, I read nothing but fantasy growing up, and so much. I mean, you know, and so much of 80s and 90s fantasy was you know, very
Yeah.
very centric. I mean, like obviously, again, the Piers Anthony stuff was
Oh
terrible.
my God.
But I remember there was just a series called Cross Time Engineer by Leo Krakowski or something like that, Polish. Also Polish, the person who wrote The Witcher.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So also by a Polish author, and it was, he travels back in time to medieval times, right before the Mongols invade Poland, and needs to get it ready to defend them. And anyway, he becomes a lord, and there's a lot of like, tumbling the 16-year-old village girls and the
Ew.
it's good to be lord kind of things. And yeah.
Any final thoughts before we go to the recap screen?
And on that light note,
Yeah, let's leave it on
There's
a
a
different
lot
note.
of
Waiting
there's
for
a
the
lot of
resurgence
fantasy out there. Some
like,
people really like
the 90s
lots of
girl
things.
fantasy, Great Books of Alta, Alana, and stuff like that. That's what I want the resurgence of. Someone asked
Okay,
me
with
once if I
that,
wanted to write a sword and
Blue
sorcery
sword.
nostalgia thing. I'm like, these aren't the things I'm nostalgic for.
For good reason.
we'll
Okay.
be back in 4 minutes.